now I'm just recording. So here we are. We missed our little intro. Well, that's for the culture. It's for the people.
For the
Now
culture,
we're
the
now
people
we're
who,
recording, of course. I feel like an absent-minded professor right now. Okay, well,
well,
here we are.
just for the people on YouTube, this is Double Trouble with J and G. I am Gunner.
And I am Jack. And every Friday at 5 p.m. Central, we come together and we pour ourselves two fingers of bourbon and we banter about art, life, and everything in between. Now let's dive into our first topic. I think today we've
I have a great transition into it. So you
perfect. Go
mentioned
for it.
that you had pomade in your hair. One of
Yes.
the most visceral images that I can imagine is this album cover by the Black Keys, and it's
Okay.
two fingies scooping up some pomade, and the album is called Thick Freakness.
Wow. Well, on this show we do pour ourselves two fingers of bourbon in my beautiful little daisy cup over here. So
Mm. But that leads me into our first topic of the
beautiful.
day, music. And how do we develop our taste in music?
How do we develop our taste in music? I think our taste in music comes from a lot of places, and I think it comes from our family and our friends. Like a lot of our personalities
Mhm.
are are from our families and friends, and I think our music is no. I think it's no different than that. I have an attachment to Led Zeppelin, and I'm sure you can guess where I got my attachment to Led Zeppelin. It's straight from my dad. I love the Rolling Stones. That's straight from my mom. So I think a lot of that is. I think a lot of it's there. I probably got into indie music when I met you, so I would say our friends are also probably a big influence on that. Little story about why I like country music.
Mm.
A girl I liked in high school was really into country music. So of course, to impress her, as one does when they're an impressionable 16-year-old, I started listening to country music. And then eventually, crushes fade. That's how high school works, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, I was like, this country music stuff's really good. So I just started listening to a bunch of country music. So we all have our origin stories. Maybe it's to impress a girl, maybe it's from your old man, but it comes from a variety of places. How about you? Where do you think yours came from?
So I had this theory in high school, and I believed that, you could tell so much about someone based on their music taste. And for me, it was like, you know, everyone who got, you know, I was drawn to people who were really into indie music, and I had like a deep discography of indie music. And I could tell based on someone's Spotify playlists that if they had the same songs that I had, they had gone down that similar rabbit hole where they like sunk hours into just doing Spotify related to things, right?
Yep.
And if you had the time to do that in high school and you like went through that experience, I think that says something about the content of your character in a way. It's like it's a bit of a jump, but I noticed that everyone I met who had heard of at least like heard of the band that I was talking about shared some sort of sense of commonality. And because it was obscure, it was straight, we sort of, united over it. And that became a cool little bonding moment, you know?
Amazing, dude.
So
That's
that's my theory on it.
I'm sorry, my headphones just died. So we're doing it live, baby.
Doing
Sweet.
it live.
So we're doing it live. So speaking of that, so tying our music tastes and how we got them back into sort of specific moments when we kind of realized what a song is, we remember maybe an association we have with that song. Do you have a time in your life where it's deeply tied to a specific song? Because audio and
Yeah.
your ears and your nose are great memory banks, right? You smell chocolate chip cookies, maybe it reminds you of grandma's house, for example. But do you have one with a specific song?
Oh, I definitely do. So Jack was just recently in New Orleans and I gave him the whole tour of the city.
Oh yeah.
And I, without explaining too much to the audience, we went through City Park and checked out a couple of places. And there is a
Oh
memory I
yeah. Oh, we did.
there's a memory I have from City Park where I was in my amazing, if we have a sponsor for the show, it would be Jeep because my Jeep has made it to hell and back and is, just a solid vehicle, the best
Well,
vehicle known to
you,
man.
you
But
know, you
anyway,
know, Jeeps, they're built Ford tough or something like that. I don't know.
well, I have some great memories of that Jeep. One of those memories was made on a particular evening where, you know, the night is starting off and I hear the song, I cue the song, right? But it's by the Alalas and
Okay.
it's called Don't You Forget It.
Okay.
And
I'm gonna
it's
have to
so
listen to it
strange.
now.
you have to, and don't you forget it, because I never will. And this is what happened. So the whole night goes through, right? I come out of this experience a changed man, and I realize at the end of the night that the same damn song had been playing for 3 hours straight.
Wow. Woo!
It was, oddly enough, called "Don't You Forget It," and yeah. So
There you go. Well, I guess you didn't forget it then.
You know,
That's hilarious, man.
fun enough to not notice that the same damn song was playing for 3 hours.
That must have been a pretty good 3 hours then, wasn't it?
Oh, yes, sir. What
I
about
would
you?
say my song is definitely, I know it's a little cliche. Most people associate Fortunate Son with a helicopter in a war movie about the Vietnam War.
Mhm.
My Fortunate Son moment is windows down, May of 2017. I'm driving home from rowing practice, my last regular season rowing practice before we go off to regionals.
Mhm.
And I have Fortunate Son cranked to like max volume as I'm humming down the freeway headed back home. It's like probably like 6:30 in the afternoon. The boats are loaded on the trailers. We're ready to go to regionals. And I am screaming the lyrics, "It ain't me," just out my car window on Interstate 5 flying back home from my rowing practice. So that's probably my not quite as good as Don't You Forget It, but there's a very vivid memory in my mind of that's when I kind of realized I was kind of done with this chapter of my life. It was interesting, a very pivotal moment.
I have one more. It's a
Okay,
bang.
hit me.
So I was the RAFI Psi. This was junior year, and junior year was a strange transitional year. I mean, obviously COVID hit, right?
Absolutely.
And I had one good quarter in the house before I went abroad, and it was a bonding time where I got to meet a lot of the people in the class right below me and forge some amazing friendships. And one of those nights came when I came back to the house blitzed, right?
As
I was
one does.
incoherent. And I walked into this room with these dudes just hanging out, and they were just listening to music, and we just started singing along to the songs, and it was like crazy. And I don't remember which one it was, but then my little old Jacob Eisenach, a great, musician,
An indie musician himself.
he's he was in the band the Cardboard Hearts, and he comes into the room with his guitar. I don't know why he had his guitar on him, but he came into the room with his guitar, and Tennessee Whiskey started playing.
Oh,
And me and Umar just started belting out the lyrics, and I lost my voice that night. We sang so loud that I lost my voice, but I'll never
that's certainly something. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I have one more, and we're both going to be able to relate to this. It's
Okay.
a certain gentleman by the name of Alec Preciado has a certain favorite song, and it's "Your Love" by the Outfield. And we talked briefly last episode about "Your Love" by the Outfield and how it effectively increases your ability to clean a kitchen by roughly 37% effective increase. That's extremely scientific, peer-reviewed research. You can just look it up on the internet. I'm sure you'll find it. However, that song I associate so heavily with doing dishes and cleaning. I don't think I can hear it and not feel the need to like scrub a pan or something. You got to hit it with some steel wool, and just that's it.
Well, do you know where Josie is?
What was that?
You know where Josie is?
Well, she's on a vacation. I think it's pretty far away too.
And that's either a reference
or you don't get it. So we would highly recommend looking that one up.
Yeah.
So transitioning now, this is a terrible segue to one of our pillars of our show, which is art, life, and everything in between are our three pillars. But we're going to transition now to art a little bit, and our resident art expert, Mr. Danger over here, is going to enlighten us. How do you see the musical art world and the physical art world interact, if at all? And what is that relationship like?
Well, let me just start off by saying that transition was a little bumpy because I saw the ball rolling across the court, but I knew that I needed that pass because I'm about to slam dunk this shit. And this is what happens.
And that's a flaming hot Chekhov's gun for what we're going to talk about later. So please continue.
For sure. So the art world and the music world are so heavily intertwined. And I actually just went on this whole Google binge search where I just like dive into these search results and look up this person who connects to this person who connects to this person. And this is honestly how I developed my taste in indie music, just finding this person was in this band, was in this band, was in this band, was dating someone in this band, you know?
Gotcha.
And so like, for instance, the lead singer of the band Phoenix, that French, 1901, like,
Sure.
an amazing band, right? So he's actually married to Sofia Coppola, the film director, right? Yeah. And she, before that, was married to Spike Jonze. Spike Jonze filmed the movie Her, and he did like music videos for like Weezer and Beastie
I was going to say
Boys.
Weezer, Spike Jonze and Weezer.
And then like, the lead dude of Vampire Weekend is married to Rashida Jones. Like there's so many relationships between these people where like the art world and the music world are almost like, I don't know, they're like existing in the same space. And you'll just see these people pop up on creative projects. And then there's another dude, Honor Titus, who just had an amazing show in New York. I forgot what gallery, maybe it was with Half Gallery or something like that. But Honor Titus, he's a painter, and he actually came from a Brooklyn punk band called Cerebral Ballsy.
That's one hell of a. That's a sentence that I don't know if I'll see recreated. A Brooklyn punk band called Cerebral Ballsy. Wow.
Yeah.
That might be grounds for cancellation. Anyway, do you find that the art world, that both of these art worlds, they're really both art worlds, are
Right.
exploring the same themes in their art right now? And if you could identify maybe one or two of those themes that you find particularly compelling.
Yeah. I think they cross over, and that's when these collaborations happen. Like I was just watching Royal Tenenbaums last night, Wes Anderson movie, and Miguel Calderon had these huge paintings in the film, and they're different series, they're like different bodies of work that are coming together, but when they're in the same space, you sort of notice the similarities between them. And I feel like that's the same way with Wes Anderson movies and the music he chooses, right? The music was made in time, but within this new context, you sort of see the cross section, right? And that little moment where they intersect, it's like, okay, this is a through line. Okay, this song in this context means that, So like, not Owen Wilson. What's his brother's name?
I don't know it off the top of my
I don't
head.
even remember. But Owen Wilson's brother, his brother's in the movie, and there's like a suicide scene, right, where he's like cutting his wrist and shaving his head. Crazy haircuts, right?
Haircuts.
Anyway,
Yeah, back to haircuts.
He's shaving his head and he's cutting his wrist, and it's playing "Needle in the Hay" by Elliott Smith. And Elliott Smith, I think Elliott Smith actually committed suicide like right after that. But you sort of like that just through line of just this deep sadness and this deep, I don't know, this concentrated feeling of emotion was just like put on display. And I don't think a lot of people like noticed that line going through the song before. No, people probably did. That's probably a huge claim that is actually not true. But I don't know. For me, it really stood out, and I was like, wow. And it was only through that pairing of film and audio that it really stuck out to me like that. But yeah.
That's incredible, man. I love that. So let's talk a little bit, because you're a visual artist primarily, but you're not only a visual artist. I want to know more about your career in musical art, specifically a small musical endeavor known as Jean-Michel Basketball. Tell me more.
So Jean-Michel Basketball was my punk band in New Orleans, and I played drums, and we got together one day, me and this guitarist, Jackson Gasparez, and we recorded the whole album in that day. And I learned how to play drums that day as well. And it sort of draws, so, the music, I'm still like trying to salvage it and trying to put out a record with it. But what for me the band represents is it represents a key part of my interest in music and in art, right? Where it's like it draws attention to this thin line between indie music and indie art, right? Independent art and low budget art and bad music and bad art, right? Where like
Is it a
there's
fine
a
line or is it
line
a
to
crooked line?
it's a very crooked line to a
We're
Kentucky
getting a
straight.
little feedback on both of these. So just move your phone a little bit away. And maybe
Yeah,
use
my
some
phone is
headphones.
very. Yeah. Are we back? Or no feedback?
Okay, I believe we are back.
Okay.
Sweet.
Yeah. So yeah, a very crooked line to get to a Kentucky straight. But you know, I found myself at the end of college, like, or at the end of high school, like drawn to these bands that were playing music where I was like, oh shit, I could do that. You know?
Interesting. Okay. Okay.
And that translated to art for me, where I was like looking at paintings and the paintings in which I could like identify the techniques that they used, you know, sort of like see how they pieced it together. And like I was able to sort of comprehend, and I was like, whoa, I could actually do that. For me, that it's what draws people to naive art, right? And
Sure. Okay. So can you just elaborate a little bit for those of us that don't know?
Yeah.
I'm getting a little feedback still too, I think, from your phone and your computer. For those of us that
Moving-
don't know, what is naive art?
So naive art is art created by a painter who hasn't necessarily been through the traditional channels of art, right? They didn't go to art school. They, you know, aren't working with major institutions, right? And they're, you know, I think a lot of people, a lot of art purists see this as a pure form of expression to where they weren't adulterated by a sort of school of art, right? And so to just finalize that point, it's like, you know, I went to Florence and saw amazing paintings by master painters, right? That were just technically on a level that I could like never hope to achieve. It was crazy.
Some of those
right?
sculptures too. I mean, there's if I can digress a bit, there's a piece of so if you move your index or your ring finger like this, there's a muscle right here that only moves when your your ring finger is flexed like this.
Oh, whoa.
In Michelangelo's David, his fingers are sort of held in a specific shape such that you can see this muscle, and it's that level of attention to detail that to me makes the masterworks of the Renaissance just unbelievably good.
Yeah. And that I have an appreciation for, but I also have appreciation for things that are intentionally made shitty. You know, there's a whole genre of like shitty paintings to where like people intentionally lean into bad aesthetics and kitsch, right?
Kitschiness. We've talked a little bit about that on this show, so we won't belabor the point too much.
That's what I feel about music. If it's like close enough within grasp where I was like, I can hope to achieve this, it makes it a little more appealing for me. I don't know. What do you think?
That's cool. No, that seems very logical because it seems like, as someone who is really not an artist in any way, whose musical prowess probably peaked at 100%ing the hardest song on Rock Band 1, there's something deeply appealing about like air guitaring something, knowing that I only have 4 fingers and they're only going to go in 4 different places, and there's only one little strum bar. Like, and thinking to myself, I don't really know how to play this, but I like thinking that I know how to play it. You know, there's something fun about that. So.
Now, you know, if you could play, I know that you would try to hit the sweet, sultry notes as played by a one and only John Mayer.
The one and only
John Mayer holds
yes.
a very special place in your heart. And I don't know whether this is because his name is John and you have this association with anyone named John.
I mean, John and Jack both, right? Because my given name is John and I go by Jack. So I really have a very strong association with both of those names.
But where does John Mayer sit in your heart? And tell us a bit about your relationship with Mr. Mayer.
So John Mayer doesn't know I exist. we're gonna get that right out of the way first.
Don't be coy.
Yeah, I'm moving to Montana to live with John, guys. It'll be a really good time. John Mayer is this interesting and conflicted character to me, and I think characters with conflict have much more appeal. So John Mayer, obviously, would you mind moving your phone away or turn down the volume a little bit? John Mayer traditionally has had some controversy. So the whole messy breakup with Taylor Swift, some Katy Perry stuff. There's a very notable, I would encourage anyone listening to look up the interview with Playboy, I believe in like 2010 or 2011. It's really bad. He looks like a total, excuse the French, douchebag. I mean, he is terrible. And just says he like describes his like intimate details of his relationships with certain celebrities. And it's just, yeah, it's really bad. It's really, really bad. And he comes across as a total asshole. But there's something to me that about like a redeemed hero almost in pop culture. And there's this, if you listen to his music, so I'll pull up some of his albums to make sure I'm setting myself correctly. So you get Battle Studies in 2009 is an excellent album. It's technically great. Before that, in 2006, you have Continuum, which is by far his most popular album. But by 2009, with Battle Studies, he's reached really the peak of his popularity and fame. And people are also recognizing that he has kind of a relationship as a little bit of a Hollywood bad boy. He's dating a lot of high-profile women. These relationships are not ending in very amicable ways. And he's starting to look pretty bad. And then the Playboy interview is, boom, it's really, really bad. And then you get this fun little album, my favorite John Mayer album in 2012 called Born and Raised. And it's a little more folksy, it's a little more country. And the song Born and Raised has made me come to tears more often than probably any other thing in my entire life. I mean, it's beautiful and it's coming straight from the soul. And it's so much less known than songs like Gravity or Slow Dancing in a Burning Room. And it just hits you right in the heart. There's a couple other songs on there. So Born and Raised is one of them. And a lot of it's about getting older. And there's a few other songs in there as well. A Face to Call Home is beautiful as well. Shadow Days is about beating depression. I mean, there's really deep, and maybe not beating depression is probably the wrong way to say that, but there's some really, really deep things and it really gets right to the heart of the matter. And I think between that and then he moves to Montana in 2012 as well. He purchases a home in Montana and releases Paradise Valley the very next year. And those two albums to me are the peak of John Mayer. I think it's after he kind of fell from grace in the popular image of America. And it's that humbling. Everyone needs to get humbled. I feel very strongly about that. Sometimes people are flying a little too high. And if you're flying a little too close to the sun, damn it, Icarus, your wax in your wings is going to melt. Right. And that humbling experience did so much for his music and made the themes of his music so much less about sort of, Your Body is a Wonderland is this fun poppy tune from the early 2000s. It's really light. It's really exciting. It's, it's about sex, really. And it's fun and it's light and it's really easy to listen to. But something like Born and Raised and talking about getting older and talking about your relationship with your family is one in his most recent album, The Search for Everything in 2017. There's a little song called In the Blood, and he's talking about his relationship with his family. I mean, that's good stuff.
Well, just hitting some of those notes that you were talking about, I think, it is so important to have humbling experiences, right? To get off your own high horse and just like really level with yourself, and tying it back to haircuts, that's what that shaving the head is like for me,
It is.
I'm wondering, so as John was having this musical journey, I don't know if you approached him later in his career or you're stuck through those hard moments, but did it color the way you perceived music? Did his message ring truer or more insincere at certain points? How'd you ride the wave?
To me, his music has reflected what he's thinking about in the moment. So if we go back all the way back to 2009, Battle Studies is the name of the album. The lead song on the album is called Heartbreak Warfare. To me, album order matters. And when your song that becomes a number one single in Heartbreak Warfare is the lead song on your album, that says something about where you are mentally. So I think he's generally maybe not done the right things in his life and probably has, a lot of crappy things that he's done to a lot of people. But when that's your number one, that's what you're thinking about. And then later on, as he kind of develops as a musician, I think his later work, to me, I enjoyed it more and more as I could relate more and more to the themes of the music.
Well, I think we're reaching 5:29. We
Okay.
have a strict rule here on Double Trouble with Jay and
We
G,
do.
where we go to 5:30 and we cut it off.
We
never cross
do.
that line.
Because on a Friday afternoon, there's
Yeah.
really important business to be had. Like some
Yep.
drinking a little bit of this Crooked Line to a Kentucky Straight over here. And it's either a reference
or you don't get it. And just as a little teaser for those of you who might tune in next week, we left a lot of things on the table. We're going to talk about next week. We're going to talk about manatees.
We're going to talk about mermaids.
We're going to talk about mermaids. We're going to talk about cities.
And we're also going to talk a little bit about basketball and sports. We're going to have a good time next week.
March Madness, ups and downs. But yeah, this is Tuning Off. I'm Gunnar.
And I am Jack. And welcome to Double Trouble with J&G, where we sit down every Friday at 5 p.m. Central, pour ourselves 2 fingers of bourbon, and we banter about art, life, and everything in between. Everyone signing off.
Sayonara.